By the middle of July, thousands of vegetable gardens across America have already been abandoned. Not because people stopped loving gardening, because life got there first. The tomato vines are wilting after a week without rain. The lettuce has stretched into bitter stalks. A garden hose lies exactly where someone dropped it during the last heat wave, still connected, still waiting. It's a scene that repeats itself every summer. Spring begins with optimism, fresh seed packets, perfectly prepared beds. Then summer arrives, the watering becomes daily, and one missed weekend turns into 2 weeks of catching up. By autumn, the beds are empty, and the entire cycle begins again. Plant, harvest, start over. We assume that's simply what gardening looks like. It isn't. For centuries, gardeners thought differently. Annual vegetables mattered, but they weren't expected to do all the work. Every year, gardeners added another permanent crop, another harvest that would quietly return without asking to be planted again. Modern gardening rewards replacement. Traditional gardening rewarded accumulation. One asks, "What should I plant this spring?" The other asks, "What can I plant that my future self will thank me for?" Today I want to show you 7 perennial food crops that answer that question. None of them will replace tomatoes or peppers. That's not the point. The point is to build a garden that becomes more dependable, more resilient, and more generous with every passing year. The first crop does something so unusual that many gardeners think it's a myth. While you're harvesting this year's onions, it's already planting next year's. Number 7. Egyptian walking onion. What if your onions planted themselves? That sounds impossible. Until you see an Egyptian walking onion. Instead of producing flowers filled with seeds, each mature stalk develops a cluster of tiny onions at its tip. As the cluster grows heavier, the stalk slowly bends, lower and lower, until those tiny bulbs touch the soil. Then something remarkable happens. They root. No gardener required. The following spring, a brand new onion is already growing a few inches away. Year after year, the patch slowly walks across the garden, spreading several feet over a decade without anyone moving a single bulb. Long before irrigation timers and seed catalogs, gardeners understood the value. Not because walking onions produce giant bulbs, they don't. Because they removed one more task from next year's calendar, the green shoots become fresh scallions in early spring, the underground bulbs flavor soups and stews, the topset bulbs can be pickled, replanted, or eaten fresh. One planting, several harvests. Give them a permanent corner in full sun with well-drained soil, and water them through the first season. After that, they become remarkably independent. Cold winters rarely bother them, summer heat barely slows them down. Picture your garden 4 years from now, fresh green shoots are poking through the soil, and you honestly can't remember the last time you planted onions. Annual vegetables ask you to remember them every spring. Walking onions quietly remember themselves. The next crop solved a different problem. Not how to plant less, but how to eat fresh food weeks before most gardens have even started growing. Number 6. Sorrel. What if your first harvest arrived before spring had really begun? For centuries, gardeners judged the arrival of spring not by the calendar, but by the first basket of fresh greens. And more often than not, that basket contained sorrel. Imagine a farmhouse 200 years ago. Winter has lingered. The root cellar is almost empty. The last of the dried beans went into the pot days ago. Then, almost overnight, bright green leaves appear where nothing seemed to be growing. Sorrel has returned. Not because anyone planted it, because it never really left. Its roots spent the winter storing energy beneath the frozen ground. People even had a name for those difficult weeks between winter stores running low and the first summer harvests. The hungry gap. Sorrel helped close it, not with enormous harvests, with dependable ones. You'll usually encounter 2 varieties. Common sorrel, with larger leaves and a bold lemon-like flavor, and French sorrel, whose smaller, delicate leaves are popular in salads. Take one bite, and the flavor surprises almost everyone. Bright, tangy, almost citrus-like, yet no lemon was added. That freshness comes naturally from organic acids inside the leaf. Cooks stirred it into soups, folded it into omelets, and mixed it through mashed potatoes because it made everything taste like spring. And the rhythm is the best part. Harvest the outer leaves, return a few days later, there are more. Give sorrel fertile soil that holds moisture without becoming waterlogged. Full sun in cooler climates. A little afternoon shade in hotter ones, to keep the leaves tender. Modern gardening asks us to prove our commitment every single season. Perennial gardening rewards the commitment we've already made. And if sorrel taught generations how to survive the hungry gap, the next crop became something even more valuable. It wasn't just food, it was insurance. Number 5. Good King Henry. What if one plant guaranteed fresh food would arrive when you needed it most? Long before supermarkets erased the seasons, spring wasn't just another time of year. It was a test. Would the stored food last long enough? Would the garden wake up before the pantry ran out? For families living close to the land, those were urgent questions. That's why Good King Henry earned a permanent place in cottage gardens across Britain and Northern Europe. Not because it produced spectacular harvests, because it was dependable. Picture a walled monastery garden at first light. Frost still clings to the beds. Most of the garden is bare soil and last year's straw. But along the south wall, deep green shoots have already broken through. A gardener kneels, cuts a handful, and carries them straight to the kitchen. No seed was sown that spring, The plant kept its side of a very old agreement. Young spring shoots emerge first, tender enough to cook much like asparagus. Then come broad, nutritious leaves that fill cooking pots before spinach is ready. Some gardeners harvested the unopened flower buds too. Several harvests, one perennial. Medieval monastery gardens maintained permanent patches for exactly that reason. The plant wasn't exciting, it was trustworthy. We choose vegetables for the biggest tomato, the sweetest corn. Previous generations asked a different question. Which plant will still show up when everything else is struggling? Give it a permanent spot with fertile, compost-enriched soil and regular moisture while it establishes. Then practice patience. The first year is mostly invisible. Energy flows into the roots. By the third, you stop thinking of it as something you planted. You just expect to find it waiting each spring. And the next plant takes that philosophy even further. It gives you 3 completely different vegetables from one extraordinary perennial. Number 4. Sea kale. What if one plant could replace 3 vegetables and then quietly feed you for decades? At this point, you might be wondering, if these plants fed families for centuries, why don't we see them today? The answer isn't that they stopped working. It's that gardening changed. Modern gardens organize themselves around crops that grow fast and finish quickly. Old kitchen gardens were organized around accumulation. Few plants illustrate that better than sea kale. 200 years ago, permanent beds of sea kale stood in the kitchen gardens of country estates, monasteries, and homesteads throughout Britain, because one plant produced several entirely different harvests. In early spring, gardeners placed clay pots over the emerging shoots, not to protect them, to hide them from the light. Without sunlight, the stems stayed pale, tender, and surprisingly mild, a technique known as blanching. Those shoots were harvested much like white asparagus. Weeks later, broad blue-green leaves became another crop, cooked like kale or spinach. Then, just before flowering, the unopened buds were steamed much like broccoli. 3 vegetables, 1 plant, 1 root system. Sea kale evolved along the gravel beaches of northern Europe, where salt spray, poor soil, and relentless wind challenged everything that tried to survive. Instead of becoming fragile, it adapted. Deeper roots, a stronger crown. Planted in full sun with excellent drainage, improve heavy soil with compost, and never let water collect around the crown in winter. The first year feels uneventful. By the third, you understand why gardeners once considered this among the finest vegetables they could grow. You're no longer harvesting this season's effort. You're harvesting years of quiet preparation. That's the kind of harvest no seed packet can sell. 3 crops remain, and they're the most remarkable on this list. One has continued feeding families long after the homes around it were abandoned. Another has outlived the people who planted it. And the last may be the greatest lesson in delayed gratification in the gardening world. But notice what the first 4 crops did not promise. None claimed you'd never need tomatoes again. None promised effortless abundance. They offered something more realistic. They reduced uncertainty. Annuals filled the summer table. Perennials carried the garden through difficult seasons, and through years when life left little time for perfect gardening. Together, they created resilience. That's the forgotten system we're rebuilding. Now let's meet the crop that kept feeding people, long after everyone had gone. Number 3. Jerusalem artichoke. What if a crop could outlive the garden it was planted in? Drive down an old country road almost anywhere in North America, and eventually you'll pass one. An abandoned homestead. The house is sagging. The barn roof fell in years ago. Whatever garden once fed this family disappeared long ago. Except, it didn't. Every September, tall green stalks rise where that garden used to be, opening small, bright yellow flowers. They look like sunflowers. That's no coincidence. They're Jerusalem artichokes, close relatives of the sunflower. And beneath those stems, the soil is still full of food. Knobby, crisp tubers with a nutty, slightly sweet flavor. Nobody has watered them in decades. The gardener left. The harvest never did. Despite the name, this plant has nothing to do with Jerusalem, and it isn't an artichoke. It's native to North America, grown and traded long before European settlers arrived. Today, many people call it the sunchoke. Slice the tubers raw into salads for a water chestnut crunch, or roast and simmer them like potatoes. Many gardeners dig them after the first frosts, when the flavor turns noticeably sweeter. Every tuber left in the soil becomes a promise for the following year. Miss one during harvest, and you've accidentally planted next season's crop. That's why abandoned patches keep producing for decades. 2 things to know before planting. First, they're enthusiastic growers. Very enthusiastic. Give them a permanent space with room to spread. Treat them more like raspberries than carrots. Second, unlike potatoes, they store their energy as inulin, a natural carbohydrate. If you've never eaten them, start with a small serving. Your digestive system usually adapts, but starting slowly makes the experience far more enjoyable. Plant them in full sun. Average soil is enough. After the first season, they take care of themselves. Sometimes the most productive part of your garden is the one asking the least from you. And the next crop proves permanence isn't only measured in years. Sometimes it's measured in generations. Number 2. Rhubarb. What if one planting could feed 3 generations? Some plants earn a place in the garden. Rhubarb earns a place in the family. There are gardens where nobody remembers planting it. Children grow up cutting the first stalks of spring with their parents. Those children become parents, then grandparents. The rhubarb simply keeps returning. Every spring, while tomato seedlings are still waiting on windowsills, thick crimson stalks push confidently through the soil. No reminder, no calendar, just another promise quietly being kept. For generations, that arrival meant more than dessert. Late winter was a season of patience. The root cellar emptying, fresh food still distant. Then rhubarb emerged. It wasn't just another crop. It was proof that winter had finally lost. Today, many people know rhubarb only for strawberry pie. Its tart stalks also become jams, compotes, syrups, chutneys, and sauces for roasted meats. One rule, though, has been passed down with every crown ever divided and shared. Eat the stalks, never the leaves. They belong in the compost pile, not the kitchen. Plant rhubarb once in rich, well-drained soil, fed generously with compost. Then do something surprisingly difficult. Wait. The first year, don't harvest. The second year, harvest lightly. Everything beneath the soil is building a foundation that may support harvests for the next 30 or 40 years. Healthy crowns commonly produce for 20 years. Many continue past 50. Some historic gardens still harvest from crowns planted before the Second World War. A gardener kneels in the soil in the 1930s, plants a single crown, and generations later, someone else is still carrying those crimson stalks into the kitchen. Not because anyone worked harder this year, because years ago, someone planted a promise that never stopped being kept. And that brings us to the final crop, the one that asks for the most patience, and rewards it most generously. Number 1. Asparagus. What if patience could feed you every spring for 30 years? If one plant captures everything we've talked about today, it's asparagus. Because it asks a question no annual vegetable ever will. How far into the future are you willing to think? Every spring, gardeners race against the calendar. Asparagus ignores all of it. Its schedule isn't measured in weeks or months, it's measured in years. The first spring after planting, a few slender spears emerge. Your instinct is to harvest them. Don't. Those first shoots aren't this year's harvest. They're next decade's. Every spear you leave grows into a tall, feathery fern that spends the summer collecting sunlight, energy that travels back underground, strengthening the crown beneath. The second year, the spears are thicker. Still, harvest lightly. The plant is investing underground, preparing for springs you haven't lived yet. Then, almost without warning, everything changes. The third spring arrives. You step into the garden one cool morning, the grass still wet with dew, and you see them. Fresh green spears breaking through the soil. Tomorrow, more. The next morning, more again. Under ideal spring conditions, asparagus can grow 6 to 7 inches in a single day, which is why experienced gardeners harvest daily during peak season. You didn't sow seeds, you didn't prepare another bed, breakfast simply appeared. Not by luck. By patience. A healthy asparagus bed commonly produces for 20 to 30 years. Many remain productive for 40. Well-maintained beds have continued for more than half a century. One afternoon spent planting crowns can become thousands of spears and decades of meals. Choose the location carefully. Full sun. Deep, fertile, well-drained soil. Generous compost before planting. Because once those crowns settle in, they intend to stay. Annual vegetables ask you to begin again. Asparagus thanks you for beginning only once. At first glance, this has been a video about 7 unusual vegetables. But it was never really about vegetables. It was about a way of thinking that slowly disappeared. For generations, gardeners didn't ask, what can I harvest this summer? They asked, what can I plant that will still be feeding this family long after today's work is forgotten? Think back through the list. The walking onion quietly planted tomorrow's harvest. Sorrel woke before spring had fully arrived. Good King Henry carried families through the hungry gap. Sea kale turned one patient investment into 3 vegetables. Jerusalem artichokes kept growing after the gardens around them disappeared. Rhubarb became older than the fence beside it. And asparagus showed us that patience itself can become a harvest. None of these plants succeeded because they were miraculous. They succeeded because they stayed. Picture your garden 10 years from now. The annual beds are still there. You'll always make room for tomatoes and beans. But around them, something has changed. The walking onions have spread into a thriving patch. Sorrel fills your basket while the soil is still cool. Jerusalem artichokes rise like sunflowers at the garden's edge. The rhubarb crown is so large you've divided it twice for neighbors. And before you've planted a single tomato, you're cutting fresh asparagus for breakfast. None of that happened because you found more free time. It happened because, years earlier, you stopped asking, what can I grow this year? And started asking, what can I build that keeps giving? Because a truly great garden doesn't just feed the people who plant it. It becomes a gift for everyone who walks through the gate after them. If one of these crops surprised you, tell us which one in the comments. And if you're growing a forgotten perennial that deserves a place beside these 7, share its story. If you enjoy uncovering forgotten crops and the timeless wisdom that helped generations grow more with less effort, subscribe to Forgotten Harvest Vault. Because the best gardens don't simply produce harvests, they leave inheritances.